an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. Season 1, Episode 2, City of Heresy. In this episode, so this dude's trying to make a religion, and honestly, in the end, it does not seem like it was his idea. What is with this lady? What's her deal? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Oh my God. I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting so distracted by the chats. Apologies. Thank you, Max, for commissioning this episode. Max, are you in the chat? I don't think I see you. I keep thinking every time I watch one of these that it's wild Max has commissioned just one episode per podcast, and then the last 2 times I've still gone over time talking about it. So evidently that was the right call to make. Thank you, Max. This is a weird one, in my opinion. It's weird in that I didn't expect a real religious vibe. If you were to tell me a religion was going to pop up in this series, I would expect it to be something extremely otherworldly. And by otherworldly, I mean like a religion that feels distinctly unfamiliar and strange. And instead, and I understand why, they decided to go with a pretty clear Christian like vibe. It makes sense with what's happening here, but it threw me off so completely. You could also call this a R'hllor of Light vibe, which is definitely in Song of Ice and Fire. R'hllor has a real like Christy flavor. That's what happens when you let it rise long enough. I'm sorry. That's a bread joke. Anyway, so I wasn't expecting this sort of like heavy energy. And by heavy, I mean, it's not just like a Christian flavor. It's really Catholic feeling. And no offense to any Catholics out there, but I think you will know what I mean. Catholicism feels very heavy. It's just, there is so much going on with it. And there's a real weightiness to the like all of the decor and the whole vibe, and I felt it with this pretty quickly, even though they don't go as intense with the atmosphere. It's still, I think, because of the extent of how much it's permeated this town already, it felt like a lot. You know, which I think is a hard thing to do really quickly. And they really nailed it right away. And I think a lot of that is just they start the episode with like, you know, a guy preaching on the radio in the background. So yeah, pray in faith and ye shall be saved. Those who have lost their way. The sun god Leto, which I swear to God, guys, y'all know, I think, right, about how Jared Leto started a cult. Did you guys know about this? So I can't not think of that, especially considering how much he looks like Jesus in a, like, you know, the more racist depictions of Jesus. So that kept on making me giggle a little bit here. Kyle says, I might be talking out of my ass, but if I'm remembering right, I think Catholicism is the flavor of Christianity most common in Japan, and it had a fraught history there. That makes sense, right? Who was the first to land in Japan from Europe? Was that Spain? Italy? Was it Italy? I don't remember. I have such a poor grasp of history. It was Italy, says Gabriella. All right. Yeah, there you go. that makes sense. I'm sure it does have a fraught history. Listen, this is the thing with, my family being from Colombia. Catholicism is fucking it down there, And it was a weird thing for me growing up because my dad was Christian, but he believed that Catholics were like completely not Christian. They did not count, but his family was Catholic. So when we would go to visit, there would be the crucifixes and the really like gruesome artwork of Christ crying blood and, all this stuff that like I found deeply disturbing as a little girl. I really hated it. And it always baffled me how this could be comforting to people, I'm sure like if it's something that you really, really grow up with maybe it could be, but I was pretty small and right away did not jive with this. So I don't know. But yeah, the spread of religion, it really feels like Catholicism tended to go hand in hand with the, what's the word I want? Like conquering, but it's not the exact word. Candace says, born again Christians don't care for Catholicism. They don't believe Catholics or Mormons are Christian. 100% they don't. Yeah. It's really funny. It like weirdly amused me as I got older to see the gatekeeping that happened. Just, okay, sure. I guess colonization. Thank you, Kyle. Anyway, okay. So these two, Ed and Al, are sitting at a little like outdoor eatery. And this guy asks if they're street performers. And Ed chokes on his drink and is like, do we look like street performers? To which the guy very reasonably replies, yes, that's why I asked. I will never get enough of that kind of response of somebody being like, does it seem like, and the other person being like, it does seem that way. This is why I thought that was what was happening. And I have to mention this here because it's the first time in this episode that it happens, but it happens, I think, in the previous one, but I was so distracted at what we were learning about the events in Al and Ed's life that I got totally caught up in talking about that and never actually mentioned this. The animation abruptly will sometimes become very chibi in moments that I don't feel going chibi is appropriate at all. I think of chibi as what you drop into that a little bit when you're doing a moment that's really funny. But they're doing it like it'll get too funny eventually. But they'll do it in a moment that for me seems pretty intensely serious. And I don't know what to think about that judgment call because it just doesn't seem like it works for me. And I don't know if that's just me. Candace says that happens in the manga too. It's an Arakawa thing. She's weird. So that's the artist, I'm assuming. Damien says, yes, but she's also awesome. I have no problem with the chibi thing because I think it can be done to great effect. But they drop into it when Ed and his brother are fleeing, being chased by guards, and the guards get like taken out one by one. It doesn't feel like it should be played as a comedy to me. It feels like you could have it be comedy once they beat these guys and then keep running away like, ha ha, fuck you, like then it would make sense. But it's the whole thing is done in that style. And I was just like, what is happening? So I'm just definitely going forward. Anytime that it happens during a moment that I'm like, why would you do it? I'm going to mention it because I just have to. So, these two are listening to this radio and they knock it over and when they get up to leave, and the shopkeeper is like, hey, what the fuck? You broke my radio. And Ed is like, oh, it's no problem. We'll fix it for you. And they do alchemy right there on the street. And we have another moment of everybody being like, oh, wait, are you the Fullmetal Alchemist? And Ed gets this real smug look on his face. And everybody is gathered around his brother instead. And you know what? Honestly, as much as Ed keeps getting irritated by this, I hope it stays this way forever. Because personally, Ed, you're the reason that your brother doesn't have a body. So I think that if he gets credit, that's fair. I'm just saying, like, it's the least you could do is to share credit with your brother who has no body. It's fine. I also feel like I didn't realize that his brother, he's wearing what I guess is like a loincloth. I thought he was wearing an apron in another scene because they're like in a kitchen or something. Is this what he wears all the time? Does he always have this on? I feel like I hadn't noticed that. But is that always what he, like this little apron? Because honestly, it's like a little 40s style, like it looks like an apron to me that you would wear in if you were like the waitress in a diner or something. Gabriella says it's part of the armor. I'm sorry. It's what? It's part of the... Is it supposed to be metal? Is that meant to be like chainmail? Because it doesn't look like chainmail. Is it meant to be just fabric? Candace says, I think Japanese armor might look like that. I thought that went like over your hips more and was like open in the front. Like, Damien says it's decorative to hide the crotch guard. I'd rather see the crotch guard. I mean, wouldn't we all? But anyway, all right. I can't handle that. So we're just going to move right along. So Father Carnello is the guy who is doing these miracles. They say that he like grants eternal life, that he can resurrect the dead. His miracles are proof that what he says is all true. And it's really wild to me because they're claiming he can bring the dead back to life. As far as we have seen, that has never happened. I'm not entirely sure why they believe that so completely. But he can take flowers and he makes these big sculptures in front of everybody. And there are like petals falling from the sky that I guess are supposed to be like also his creation. I don't know. But transmuting that flower shouldn't work this way. It should be, if he transforms it into anything, it should be something that is of equal mass. And he's taking organic matter and he's transforming it into something that is inorganic, which I'm not sure if it's meant to be metal or glass. It sort of looks like glass to me, or like gemstones or something. But they're talking about how that shouldn't be possible. And if he is doing this, there's only one way that it can be. And it is a philosopher's stone, which I am going to assume is the one thing that Ed said was missing from the original attempt to bring his mother back to life. So they go into one of these churches, and I don't think I had quite clocked how long this religion had been taking hold. I think that I assumed that this church was like basically taken over from another religion for this guy. But I don't know why I thought that, because pretty clearly it was built for him, right? Like there has been some time for him to really take hold in this community. And Ed and Al come into the church, and there is a woman praying about how much she wants to bring someone back. And we wind up finding out that her fiance died. And this dude is promising that he'll be able to bring her fiance back if she basically, it's like if she has enough faith and serves devotedly enough for long enough. It's a very like the kind of thing where there's no actual date where this is supposed to occur. It's just a vague, well, you know, I'll get around to doing it at some point. And you have to prove that you're worthy by this like extremely imprecise set of metrics that I can consistently claim you have not yet reached no matter what you do. And that way you keep thinking it's your own shortcoming and not the fact that I'm covering for how I can't do it. And she is talking to Ed and asks if he's like part of this church. And he says no. And she's like, if you could become part of this church, it probably would help you and God could bless you and make you grow taller. I really want to know, does anybody in the world, other than somebody who's like a little person, does anybody go around getting this much commentary on their height? Is this like, how he's only supposed to be what, like 14 at this point? 15? Like, why is everybody ragging on his height so much? Is he supposed to be unusually short? Because he doesn't seem that short for like a teenager. And his brother makes him look shorter, but his brother is literally like 7.5 feet tall. So, you know, I mean, it's a weird conceit that he's always being mocked for his height. And it's like, I am supposed to giggle at how mad he gets. But honestly, he's right to be mad, because what the fuck is everybody's problem? Why do they bring it up all the time? It does seem like it's everybody else's problem. Like, get over yourselves, everyone. Chill. It doesn't like, why are you so hung up on this? Damien says being beside his brother and average teenage height might be taller than what he's at. Being beside his brother and average teenage height might be taller than what he's at. I'm not sure what you mean, Damien. I'm sorry. Do you mean like it might make him look smaller than he really is? Okay, got you. Yeah, I guess so. It's just like everybody keeps, it's the sort of thing that if you like walked around and everybody was like making the same comment about your looks, of course you would start to develop a complex about that one particular thing. And her being like, God would bless you and make you grow taller. Bitch, that's like somebody being like, well, maybe if you found Jesus, you would finally be thin. I mean, I will crack your skull in half. What the fuck is wrong with you, you know? Anyway, so this is when he brings out the book and begins reading all of the elements on the recipe list for doing the human... Oh my God, guys. I keep wanting to say thaumaturgy, and that is very, very much not the thing. Kyle says, one of my few gripes with this series is that this joke isn't funny and they just keep doing it. Yeah, I have to agree, Kyle. I kind of thought like there would be more indicators as to why this is funny, that they would like, it would start off peppered in and then they would sort of circle back around to how maybe this is something that he had always been sensitive about, or something that like happened to him due to the backlash of this spell that he tried, and that he is actually shorter than average. I don't know. I just kept thinking that they would tie it somehow, and it seems like they're not going to do it. And so all it is this kid getting mad because people keep mocking his height. And I guess it's supposed to be, he is so like kind of full of himself, honestly, that it's the only way that he keeps being cut back down to size, so to speak. And that in itself is supposed to be funny, but it just doesn't quite work. I think that's the point, because of how most times when it's happening, he's in the middle of a bit of a smug moment, and then he comes right out of it after whatever somebody says. So that's why I believe it's meant to be taken that way, but I just don't feel like it's done well enough to justify how consistent it is. Gus says, I knew a really short kid in high school, and there were lots of comments about it because high school, but he owned it, so it wasn't too bad. Yeah, honestly, like, if he weren't so sensitive, probably people who do it to, like, get a rise out of him wouldn't bother. But also, like, you have the right to be sensitive when everybody keeps on ragging on you about something that you cannot change. Transmutation. Thank you, Rosalie. Damien says it might be in part a cultural thing. Japanese humor can be wonky to NA audiences at times. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So anyway, yeah, basically he recites this whole thing to her in an effort to be like, that is the recipe. And honestly, all of those ingredients are super cheap to buy because human life is evidently pretty cheap, but it's never been done successfully. And she first of all tries to say it's heresy for him to say that life is cheap. And he's doing this sort of edgelord thing here a little bit. This is one of those things where, like, look, I personally understand people's difficulty with religion and their baggage around it. Like, trust me, having grown up the way that I did, there's no way to not get it. But I feel like in some ways, the people who are seeking to break free from that can be as insufferable as the religious folks. And it's so extremely tiring to see people jumping in anywhere and be like, you know, at any given post, if you have something like, name a book that you tried to read but couldn't finish, the Bible. And it'll be like 60 people writing the Bible, each for some reason thinking they're the only person to make this joke when you can clearly see 1,100 other people made that same joke above you. So why don't you just read the comments and not embarrass yourself? But here we are. And the other day, somebody asked about, like, what is your favorite fictional religion? And they were trying to talk about, like, religions that are in novels and fiction. And people were like, Christianity. Oh, my God. Grow up. Like, you know, you may not believe it. It may not be real. That doesn't make it not a real religion, though. That's not how that works. You get that, right? Like, a religion doesn't need to be sanctioned to be a religion, especially sanctioned by some fucking guy with his hand down his pants on the internet. Like, just stop. So this bit with him just being like, well, you know, scientists like facts and we like to know, and I'm just like, oh, jerk off motion, whatever. Like, I'm sure that this is something that at the time felt more transgressive than it does now. And I mean, that's the right. Kyle is saying Ed doing some epic atheist owns on this grieving woman. That's the other thing. It's one thing to have this attitude with a person who's actively, like, getting up in your face in a way that's very pushy, but he walked into the church. You know, like, it's not like they dragged him in there to try to convert him. He walked in and started a conversation with a praying woman who has lost somebody. And how about you just don't right now, kiddo? Like, you're so exhausting. Candace says, but also he's like 15 and has a massive grudge with the world. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Like, yeah, that's exactly it. I'm not saying that his behavior does not make sense within his character. I'm saying he sucks. Honestly, I stand by that. He sucks. Like, it's fine. He's probably gonna suck. A lot of characters and a lot of things I read suck. So that's fine. But I just have to say it, you know? And it's really, when he is set next to his adorable cinnamon roll brother, who is the best angel that ever lived, how can you not notice how much he sucks all the more? You know, it's just, you know, Damien says Ed is in the anime/manga folder for the trope Hollywood atheist. In fact, he's the first entry. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly understandable why they're playing this with him, because that's clearly this part of his personality. And I don't mean like the combative part of his personality. I mean him leaning into the scientific aspects of things. This is the part of his personality that they're trying to play up because of his goals and what he's trying to do. And to emphasize, I think, that what he's after with this transmutation is actually possible according to the knowledge that he has. So this isn't some pipe dream that he's searching for. There's evidence that he has that we haven't seen, pointing to the fact that this is actually possible. And it all makes sense, but I'm going to have to mention every time it happens that it sucks. It's just a very fine line. You can be defensive of your position of atheism or agnosticism. Is that how you say that? And I have no problem with that. You have every right to do that. But it just, when you seem to go trying to find a fight, that's when I start to be like, all right, you know what? Why don't you just go play a video game or something and stop it? So this woman is a fervent believer, and she's that kind of fervent believer that is so saddening because it's born of desperation. And a lot of people who are fervent believers, it comes from that kind of place, and it will be a different thing for each person. But this was definitely the energy that my father had. My father had a lot of really awful shit in his past that he had done, and also struggled with addiction. And so the desperation to which he clung to religion was very real. And I understand it. It's like, I'm not mad. I wish that you hadn't been the way you were about that. But holding on to religion as a source of hope when you don't really know what else to latch onto because everything else has been a nightmare or let you down, or, you know what I mean? I completely get how it would be the life raft you need. But when you are the kind of desperate that she is, that he had been, it can be really dangerous, that combination. And what I find interesting about this, what is this guy's name? Father Capello? Is it Capello? Capriso? It was something that sounded really Italian, which makes sense, I guess, considering what Kyle was saying. Cornello. Thank you, Kyle. This dude reminds me in a weird way of another thing that I was covering for Spoil Me. Those of you who are familiar with the Shadow and Bone series, and there's also been a TV show made, there is a character named Alina Starkov, and I covered the book. And the whole premise of the story is that Alina has an ability that has never been seen before, that is in very specific opposition to another guy who has an ability that's never been seen before. He can summon darkness, and she can summon light. And because of the damage the guy who can summon darkness has done, her ability, once it manifests and becomes known, is seen as the answer to everyone's prayers because they believe that she can save them. It's a different situation because obviously Cornello is making up his ability. He's faking it in order to gain the trust of all these people. And Alina is not faking hers. But it results in the same thing where she winds up having really fervent followers who see her as a literal saint and are willing to give their lives up for her. And she's deeply uncomfortable with it. She didn't ask for this ability. She can't control it as well as she should be able to. And she just does not feel worthy of the trust that has been instilled by all these people and how much of a sacrifice they're all prepared to make at the drop of a hat at her say-so. And it's just really interesting to me, the difference in the energy. This guy is desperate for that kind of following for whatever reason. And it's weird because, like, he clearly wants power, but there's a feeling once the stone breaks, and it's unclear to me, when the stone breaks, his whole vibe changes. And I'm like, is it just because he knows his source of power is gone and he's just panicking? Or was there something about the stone that was influencing the way he was behaving? Because it felt almost like he had been in a trance or been influenced and then comes out of it and abruptly, like, doesn't know what was going on, or feels like, wait, I didn't mean it. And I couldn't tell if that was like, you know, the other guy who had a stone that broke, I'm pretty sure that man died before the stone itself broke. So we didn't see a comparable result because there wasn't time. And so that's my main question with this dude is, like, how much of this was his own idea and how much of this was, like, planted in his head by somebody else simply in a conversation, and how much of it was like a magical influence that was happening because of this stone that he's been using. But yeah, the idea of, like, creating a belief in people that is so strong that they are willing to lay down their lives for you. I can't imagine wielding that kind of power. Like, I just, what is it that he actually wanted? That's my question, because the whole thing is like, I'm going to take over this entire city. And then we see that there's this woman who I think is lust, by the way, because the other guy's gluttony, I think, right? So we've only seen those two so far, but I'm going to assume the other, like, 5 are around somewhere. But this dude's like, I'm going to take over this city. Maybe I'll even carve out a piece of it for you. And then we see that there's this whole other being involved. I doubt that that being was planning on letting you take this world over. I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure that's not how that was going to go at all. And you think it is, or it was somebody speaking through you and you weren't actually saying that yourself. I don't know. But yeah, so there's so much to, like, go over here. So eventually Ed is like, maybe the father can save an arrogant scientist like me. And she's like, oh, this is perfect. Yes, he'll definitely be able to lead you to the light. And we cut to Cornello, and he is talking to some assistant man who tells him that the Elric brothers are here to see him. And at first he just does the, tell him to go away, fuck off. And then stops and is like, wait, the Elric brothers, that sounds familiar. And he knows that they are working with the military and assumes that this means that they are onto him, that there is something, like, you know. And when the guy says, oh, the man in the armor is the Fullmetal Alchemist, and he's like, yes, dressing the part, it would seem, which is funny. So yeah, that's him, the man in the armor. I love that specifically being said. Why would a state alchemist be here in Lior? Surely they can't have found out about our plans. I love whenever somebody stops and is like, well, I certainly hope that they haven't discovered our plan. Our secret plan, our secret dastardly plan, our secret dastardly traitorous plan. Calm down. So this dude is like, hey, you know what I'm going to do, which will definitely never be a problem, is we're going to bring this kid in as if to see me and then kill him. Father Cornello, I implore you, think this through. How did you expect this to go? It's not even like they staged an accident. Okay? Let's say a piece of scaffolding falls over. Oh, tragic. Oh, we're so sorry. We've been working on renovations. He was very short. We didn't see him there. They pull a gun on him. What are you going to say? He got mugged in your church? What are you going to say happened? What are you even doing? Like, I just, honestly, just so poorly thought out. And it's so funny how this gun winds up being like the centerpiece, considering what these two can do. This guy has a ring that's allowing him to like create shit out of nothing, evidently. But he is still insisting on getting this girl to use a gun to kill the kid. And for some reason, and you guys can tell me if there is a reason why, our guy doesn't use his metal powers to like just deform the gun so it's unusable. Does he have to be touching something for it to happen? Is that why? Everybody's saying yes. Okay. Oh my God, Michael, church crime is up 80%. Honestly, probably. Okay. So it's not something that you can just use from far away. That's good. I like that though. It's better to have a limit. It's just funny because they all have like these abilities and nobody's using them. They're just like, grab the gun. I just can't get over what a bad plan this is. Like, everything about it is so obviously going to come back and bite this guy. If you think the military is onto you, the worst possible way to handle somebody from the military evidently coming to investigate is to kill them. Even if you don't let them find out that he's dead. Let's say you just made him go away and you hid the body and nobody just ever knew what happened to him. That's also very bad. He came here to investigate this one thing in particular and then vanished off the face of the earth. That will look very suspicious. Father Cornello, you are bad at this and you deserved to be eaten. I'm just saying. So, this assistant is like, oh, he decided to spare you a few moments and leads him in back with this girl. What is her name? And he's like, good, it's agreed. We'll make this quick. And he turns around and pulls the gun in front of, oh, her name is Rose. In front of Rose. And I was just, again, another thing. You don't need to do this in front of her. Why is she there? There's just so much of this doesn't make any sense at all. It's fine. So, as anybody who knew what his abilities were could have told you, Ed takes these guys out, no problem. It's like 3 seconds, and they are all on their fucking faces. And then here comes Cornello, and he's like, oh, he clearly misunderstood. He didn't know what, he like carried out his own instruction. What are you talking about? All right, sure. And so what he decides to do is play it like he's going to have a conversation and that this was all a big misunderstanding. And then Ed, when he confronts him about how like what you're doing is definitely alchemy, it's just that you've got access to some other version of that power. Ed is like, yeah, I did have some trouble figuring out how you could sidestep the law of equivalent exchange. And then I started thinking about it and figured out you'd probably acquired some kind of object to make it possible. And he points out the Philosopher's Stone on the guy's ring. And the dude's like, no, it's just a ring. And this is when Cornello starts to play it a slightly different way. First he says, I'm God's humble servant. I'm just a conduit for his power. And you clearly are an incorrigible heathen. And he just says, you're a heathen, and then tells Rose to pick the gun up. And then says, now, child, I want you to shoot the Fullmetal Alchemist. I cannot with how incredibly clumsy this all is. Just don't. Don't involve Rose. Why would you do this? You're just going to have to kill Rose. And if you have to kill Rose, then just kill them all yourself. What? Like, I think that the intention when somebody like this guy who is trying to create this, loyal following, what you try and do is get someone to a point where they have committed an act that is so repugnant to them in the name of loyalty that they are now bound to you out of guilt because they have to keep believing whatever they believed in order to justify what they've done, right? But the thing is that it just feels so out of nowhere. There's no ramp up to this. We don't know Rose at all. So it doesn't hit that way for me. It just hits as like, this is so unnecessary. There were a million more elegant ways to handle doing this. So anyway, he's just like, my word is the word of Leto himself. It is God's will. Shoot him, Rose. And she, it can't do it right away. And this is when he's like, who was it who saved you from the depths of despair last year? Have you forgotten? And I guess it's just stopped her from the depths of despair when he died. But I thought he was going to say, who was it that brought your fiance back? Or, did something. It turns out that all he did was be there for her, which, I mean, I'm not saying that's nothing, but I was surprised that was kind of all it was. And when he says this, the camera, so to speak, goes back to her face and she's holding the gun and it looks like she's pointing it at her own chin. And I was like, wait, is she about to kill herself? I thought that they were suggesting that either he was making her start to kill herself, or she was considering doing that rather than listening to him. But I think it was just the angle of the illustration. And then he asks, remember what I promised you? And she holds the gun up, and it's really funny to me because I wasn't sure. She points the gun at Al because she thinks he's the Fullmetal Alchemist. And this is one of the first times where Al goes chibi. And it's just an odd moment because he's panicking. And instead, because I was kind of like, is Al going to tell her, or is he going to try and bravely be willing to take a bullet? I mean, you could just bravely take a bullet because evidently the bullets don't really hurt you, but he doesn't. He's like, it's not me. And surprisingly, Ed is like, it's me. And I'm like, that means she's just going to shoot you, right? But, evidently that's not something that he's particularly concerned about. He just wants everybody to know who he is. I'm sorry, but I have to do this. I don't have a choice. I've seen his miracles. Father Cornello will bring him back to life. I have faith. And Ed just says, okay, fine, then shoot. And she starts to sort of pull back as if she's not going to, but she does. She pulls the trigger. She knocks Al's head right off. And then when she sees that Al isn't actually in the suit and the suit is still moving around and talking, she is understandably simultaneously relieved and distraught. And Father Cornello is like, oh, this is perfect, because as far as he's concerned, this is evidence of the fact that this dude is evil and dabbles in the dark arts, essentially. This unholy thing is an abomination. Evil of this kind must be purged. And he pulls on a lever and a chimera walks out into the fray. Walks out in amongst Rose. I guess it's supposed to be that the chimera is just supposed to know who to attack. I guess the point is supposed to be that like Cornello can like mind control the animal, or it just I don't know. But this thing walks out. Rose backs away. Ed summons a weapon from the floor, and this dude is like, "Oh, no transmutation, Circle. You truly are gifted." I love whenever villains are obligated to give a compliment before they kill somebody. This is a thing in so much fiction, is well, you obviously have abilities far beyond it, and we could have worked together. It didn't have to be this way. It's one of my favorite tropes. I love it. Look, I love compliments. And if it's coming from somebody who kind of hates me, it means a lot more. Let's be frank. So we have the fight. This chimera slashes through his pant legs, and then his poor claws just come off. And I felt honestly really bad. This creature did not get any say in this. He's clearly been like assembled from parts in a way that's probably really fucked up. And tries to attack again. And he is biting on Ed's arm. And Ed's just like, "Yeah, come on, kitty." And then punches him so he goes flying. And I was just like, I just don't like this. I just don't like seeing this little cat get beat up. Poor thing lost its claws. So this is when he does his like big reveal of his metal arm and whips his cloak off all dramatically so that he's standing there with no shirt on and his metal arm. And he says, "Come down here and you'll see who the real novice is." Fullmetal Alchemist. And then it goes to commercial. It's pretty good. And it goes to commercial, and the image right when it says Fullmetal Alchemist is Cornello standing there with his ring glowing and with this like evil grin. And I love these like character cards. Do they have them somewhere collected? They have to have them on like a wiki or something, right? I want one of myself. I want somebody to draw one of me as an anime character. The expressions on everybody's faces and the positioning that they're in for the car, like it's all very evocative, and I am just 100% about it. So Fullmetal Alchemist. Oh, and then we get the one of Rose, and she's like looking all distraught, like sort of off camera with her face tilted and her hair blowing to cover her face and eyes and whatever. So this is when we come back. This dude is still trying to convince Rose. They committed a taboo, and this is blah, 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 blah. Long story short, she realizes that the story about Icarus, he never says the word Icarus, but like it is Icarus, that Ed was telling her was really about himself. And Ed is like, "Yeah, see, this is what happens when you try human transmutation. It doesn't work." And later on, Al says, "Yeah, it cost us his arm and leg and my entire body, and we didn't even get our mom back. We got like this weird non-human thing." So one can only imagine what it would actually cost if it were to work. And this is when this dude fucking summons a machine gun, which is honestly, I don't know why that fucking cracks me up so bad. I don't know if this is something that Ed would be able to do. It's what the impression that I get is the fact that this is something that's got like a lot of moving parts, and one would assume gunpowder and whatnot. I'm thinking it's like Terminator rules, where the T-1000 can form like stabbing weapons, but it can't do things that have like chemical reactions and moving parts. So it couldn't make a machine gun or a bomb. The T-1000 can turn itself into a knife or hooks or whatever, but that's about the extent of it, right? So I'm thinking that probably Ed can't also just summon a Gatling gun. I could be wrong, but feel free to correct me. And Ed summons like this wall to protect himself. I do really enjoy when this guy is like, "I'm going to send you to God," and Ed says, even if I went, he'd probably send me right back here, which honestly is kind of a baller line. Just like, oh yeah, God doesn't want to deal with me. God would just be like, yeah, no, you're going back. So this is when Ed just makes a door in the wall. And that, I think, is maybe my favorite use of his power so far. Just touching a wall and it's not even like, I'm just going to make the wall break apart so we can slip through. He touches the wall and he makes two very intricately decorated double doors. And I am in love with that. I swear to God, like I'm thinking of all the ways that you could make this work. You could have the double doors and have like little windows formed in them. You could have like a little staircase kind of that you like walk up and down again to like really make an entrance. You could have maybe sort of a beaded curtain of like metals or rocks that like hang and have this really dramatic sound and like overall aesthetic. There's just so much that you could do in this moment to really just be like, I'm out. I really like the whole concept of this. And this is when they go chibi as they run away. As this guy is yelling, those heathens seek to harm the order. They must be stopped. And these dudes are standing at the end of the hallway with their gun, just very relaxed, like, well, obviously, we have a gun. And I'm like, did you see him make a fucking door in the wall? They don't give a shit about your gun, guy. It's fine. So yeah, they sail through, no problem. Those people are all on the ground. And then we have the odd activity of Al pulling a bell down out of the bell tower while talking to Rose. And I actually kind of liked this, as much as it's like very tempting to be irritated with Rose, just flat out annoyed. Her insisting just because it didn't work for you guys doesn't mean that the father can't do it. That makes a lot of sense. That somebody who has believed, I mean, it's a combination of you want to keep having faith in a person that you've instilled trust in, and you want to see the person that you're grieving again. And it's not going to be so easy to give up on that just because it didn't work for this one guy. Clearly, he was even puzzled at what Father Cornello was doing. So that means that Father Cornello has access to some kind of power that this dude doesn't understand. So if it didn't work for that guy, that's not really meaningful because he doesn't know everything. And I can see how she would still be clinging to hope there. It makes total sense to me. But Al here like tells the story about what happened with his mother and pulls off the helmet head and shows the marking on the inside with blood. And then in his office, Father Cornello walks in and fucking Ed is just chilling on his desk, sitting practically like with his feet up and a cup of coffee. And he's just like, "Yo, what's up? Real quick, why are you doing all of this?" And Father Cornello is like, "Ah, yes. Why? Well, let me tell you about how I think everybody is a dumb fuckwit. Let me explain my desire to dominate all of them with a fake religion because they're idiot losers. Let me tell you about how I plan to take over everything by using them all as pawns because they're worthless loser idiots. And also, I hate them." And just completely puts everything out there, his whole plan. And it is honestly like so totally predictable that this, I could not, with how easy it was to get him to admit all of this. "I'll use the Philosopher's Stone to tear the country apart. Who knows? I might even carve you out a slice." And as he says this, his eyes begin to glow. And this is why I'm not sure it's him talking. Is it? Or is the stone making his eyes glow? Like, is that just a side effect or what? Because like, it just feels like there's a whole other thing happening here. And then he begins laughing evilly, and Ed starts laughing too. And I love how when Ed starts laughing, he immediately stops and is like, wait, why are you laughing? You know what I've never done? And probably I won't be in this situation, because as you get older, people just like straight up coming up to you and insulting you doesn't happen the way it does when like you're in school. But I have never tried, if somebody says something insulting and starts laughing along with them. And I feel like that would really confuse somebody and really like pay off. I feel like you could lean into it and make that person just so wrong-footed because they don't know how to handle that you're laughing at the joke instead of getting upset. I could see it, like you could kind of do an 8 Mile thing with it where you decide that you're going to like make fun of yourself right along with them. So just be like, oh my God, what is up with your hair? And be like, I know, right? And my shoes, I mean, come on. And they would just not know where to go with it. Anyway, it's just giving me ideas. Laughing along with the bad guy feels like something I want Ed to do, even when he doesn't have the upper hand, actually. Because as we see, he's laughing because this guy walked right into his trap. But what if Ed were to laugh when there was no trap? And he's just like, oh yeah, good one. That was pretty funny, actually. Like, I just want to see what a person would do. So anyway, you really are a novice, aren't you? And he shows that he has like an on switch in his hand with the mic right under this guy's feet. And Cornello realizes that he has been completely outed. And we see, as there's a slow pan, as we go from little Al, giant Al, holding up this speaker from the bell tower, and everybody in town hearing this and looking various amounts of dismayed and shocked and horrified or chagrined. There's one guy who's kind of like face palming. And I was like unclear. He might be face palming because he's like, I can't believe I got taken. Or it might have been the guy that was like one of his assistants who was in on it, being like, I can't believe that he just got played like that. But either way, he tries to summon a weapon here, even though, honestly, what good do you think that's going to do you at this point? Like, the game is up, man. He's already what's the word I want? Broadcast what you were saying to everybody. So if you killed him, what would that do? Like, nothing. This guy just is bad at this. He's bad at it. It's wild that he has gotten away with this long. But he tries to summon this gun to kill Ed, and he pushes it too far. He's using too much of this stone ability, which is apparently what happened with that guy, Isaac, in the first episode, where he pushed it too much and the stone broke. And there's this like rebound, or it might be that his like actual alchemy rebounded, but I got the impression it was because he was doing too much with the stone. But it fuses with his arm, and he says, now behold, the chosen emissary of the sun god, Leto. And he fucking hulks out. Is this supposed to be an ability of the ring? Or is this like a being that lived in his skin? Or what is this? I'm assuming that this is from the stone, but it doesn't seem like being able to change your own body this way was something that we've seen before. So I'm just, I don't know where the line is between what's a normal alchemy ability and what's something that shouldn't be possible, technically. I'm assuming that the fact that he has made himself a bigger person, that's not because he's like fucking around with mass, which shouldn't be allowed. So I'm going to say that this is probably the ring. But yeah, they get into a big like knockdown drag out fight. Once again, I'm just like, what did you think was going to happen here, guy? Even if you won, like, what did you think you were going to accomplish? And Ed manages to take him out pretty fucking easily by using transmutation on the statue of the god that's standing behind the altar. It's kind of a weird thing, actually. I guess that he does it through the floor, and the ability, the magic, so to speak, goes through the floor up the arm of the statue, and that's how he does it. Because I was about to say he wasn't touching it, but there's enough of a connection that I guess it's sort of like the magic itself is electricity, and you just need a conduit, and then you're connected enough. I'm assuming that you need a conduit that's the same material. Going back to why he didn't just fuck up that gun, there was a person standing on the floor holding the gun. I am assuming that if he were to try and make that human being the conduit, sending the magic through the floor and through the person and then to the gun, that person's body would break the link. I don't know how that works. Yeah. Anyway, so this is when he yells at this dude because he's completely depowered. Just give me the stone. And when he says that, this dude is crying and looks really freaked out. And this is part of why I was was that actually him? And the stone breaks and falls out of the ring. And Ed is the Philosopher's Stone is supposed to be the perfect material. Why did it break? And the guy is literally I don't know anything about this. Just please don't hurt me. I'm helpless without the stone. Spare me. And Ed, for his part, is devastated because he thinks it's just a fake. I'm not sure if it's a fake or if the stone isn't able to do what he thought. Because he says it's supposed to be a perfect material. Well, supposed to be is a lot of words. According to who? Where did they get that information? And how, perfect material, does that necessarily mean that it's totally unbreakable? Or does it mean that it's the perfect material for harnessing a power you could never imagine? But maybe there's a limit to that. He jumps right to assuming it's a fake, and maybe it's a fake, or maybe it's just, you're the one who assigned it the name of Philosopher's Stone. Cornello never called it that. So when you're saying it's a fake, he never claimed it was what you're saying it was. So maybe just you're deciding that, and then also deciding it's fake, which doesn't really seem fair. If it's not in the listing on eBay. So he just walks off and is devastated over this, having traveled all this way and gone through all of this for nothing. And then Rose tries to hold him up and his brother up for the stone. He tries to tell her that it's broken, and she's sure that he's lying because he just wants to keep it for himself, which that's very reasonable. And she makes the mistake of being you just want it to bring your mother back. And he just tells her to shut up and then says, people don't come back from the dead, Rose. And I'm okay, but isn't that the entire reason you're doing this though, Ed? Or is it just because he's trying to get his brother's body back? But isn't that still sort of coming back from the, you're trying to make a body? I don't know. I guess he's left off trying to bring his mother back from the dead. And it's just to get the body back, which he doesn't see as the same thing. For me, it feels like it's really the same wheelhouse. It might not be the exact same thing, but it's pretty much the same thing. But it's fine. So, he manages to finally convince her that really this dude is gone. Sorry, man. I know that you wanted him to be able to be brought back to life, but that's just not going to happen. And she says, that hope was all I had left. What am I supposed to believe in now? And honestly, guys, there comes this sort of intense moment. The boys are walking toward her, and it really looks like they're going to come over and comfort her. And they just walk past her on the ground crying. I really thought they were going to be like, hey, I'm sorry, and like put their hand on her shoulder. And they straight up stone cold walk past her without even like really making eye contact or anything. And I was like, oh my God, y'all are cold-blooded. And Ed just tells her, like, what are you supposed to believe in? I mean, I can't tell you that. You just have to figure that out for yourself. Get up and walk. You've got 2 good legs, so use them. And I was like, my God. I mean, look, he's not wrong, but like, damn, you know? So this episode ends with lust showing up with gluttony and being like, this guy, you totally fucked it up for us, and I think I'm gonna have to start from scratch now, and this sucks. And Gluttony asks if he can eat this dude, and she tells him he'll give you indigestion. And I can't get over Cornello. He literally pulls a gun like he's going to shoot this woman. What are you even thinking? And there is like, before you know it, a spike right through his head. And we go to his POV, which just happens to be locked right onto her cleavage. I know it's meant to be that we're seeing the marking on her chest, but honestly, we all know what's happening here. Come on. And it ends with Gluttony lifting his head and looking at him and then getting this very excited look on his face, opening his mouth, and we see the marking on his tongue as he starts to eat the guy, and that's the end of the episode. So, pretty intense. So, all right, I'm going to wrap. I'm overtime as usual, but thank you guys again very much for hanging out with me. Thank you, Max, for commissioning this. Hope y'all are enjoying the coverage, and I'll be seeing you on Friday with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.